Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Sam Taggart. Sam is a good friend of mine, someone I've admired from afar for a long time. Super impressive what he's building and has built. The guy knows sales incredibly well. You can see, if you're watching the video version right now, you can see his new book, spoiler alert, over his left shoulder. He started selling golf balls and lemonade at 7, went door to door. So we have that in common, the whole door to door sales thing. Vivint, you name it, has built an incredibly successful sales training company, D2D con, door to door community, but then beyond just door to door stuff, sales, training sales. And what we're going to be talking about today is that sales is everywhere and how you can use the skill set of sales to sell more books, to grow your business. And if we're lucky, and if I'm lucky, we might even nerd out a bit on building high-performing sales organizations. So entrepreneurs, CEOs, salespeople, you're going to want to listen to this and take some notes. It's going to get some good stuff. We're learning from the best.
Yeah, this will
Man,
be
what's
fun.
going on?
I'm excited to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's dive in. The new book, guys, just so you know it right off the top, is Eat What You Kill. If you want to get better at sales, you need to buy the book. And it's just now launching as we launch this podcast episode. So grab a copy of the book. But I guess I'd zoom out. You've done multiple books, Sam. I was just digging through Amazon earlier. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know Sam had all these books. So
Yeah.
why books? Why why are you doing this as part of your brand, your business, etc.?
Yeah, great question. And thanks for having me on, man. This has been a long time coming. And for those guys that are listening, like you're listening to dope podcasts. Like, Chandler always puts on a good show and has a good heart. There's like a lot of people that don't have the great heart, and Chandler's definitely a good one. So for me, like books are it's funny. So the first book I wrote was called ABCs of Closing, and it was in 2017. And it was me sitting in Lake Powell on a houseboat, and all of a sudden this idea comes, like the A close, the B close, the C close, the D close, and I just like literally did the alphabet. I was like, what's the Z close? You know what I mean? I'm like just like ABC, and now I just created the outline for the book. Like I was like, oh, I just write a chapter for each letter of the alphabet, and I wrote it within like a week. And then the second book was the self experience, which you can see up here, which really was more of a process of just getting my story out and like my own experience and helping others find their own self experience. And I think a lot of people are afraid to find that experience. So it's like, why write a book? I think this was the big aha for me making that second one, which was, the man in the making. Meaning a lot of times the book isn't necessarily like, I don't know how many I've sold of that, maybe 50. I have no idea, but I don't care. Like I give them away. They're like, I had a friend yesterday hit me up and he goes, man, I'm going through a divorce. I know you went through a divorce. I'm like, what's your address? Ship him a book. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, let me not respond to you by like me talking through this with you. Just go read the dang book about, my divorce and my, struggles with religion and this and that. And like what like went through it. And I think just getting your thought into paper. But this last one has been like a 2.5-year project with Penguin Random House, and it's called Eat What You Kill, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everything. And they reached out after a New Yorker article came out on me where it was called The Hard Sell. You can go look that up. But essentially, like today, the world is calling for more carnivores. And, door to door, you've done it. A lot of people listening here might have had their door knocked, or maybe you started that route. And you look at like really successful entrepreneurs from, the guy, CEO of Starbucks to, Mark Cuban to Paul DeGiorgio, like all these guys. I literally just got off the phone today with a guy named James Dixon. He runs Absolute Motivation, really big keynote guy. And he was just like, oh my gosh, can you come and speak on tour with me? And like calls me and like, and he was stoked because he's like, that's what they're missing. And he's like, when I got my start, I'm going business to business, door to door. I didn't take a salary. I didn't take, the safe route. I said, I'm going to hunt. Don't give me the leads. I'll go create my own freaking leads. Where do you find people like that today? Like you go post an Indeed ad, or you go to a college and you're like, there's no base, there's no benefit, there's no leads. There is just you, product, go. And the 1% that are weird enough to go do that, they're the ones that are shakers and movers of the world. And I'm like, what if we could create a book that inspires sales organizations, sales teams, that shifts the mindset to being like, oh, as long as I got 5 leads today, I got somebody to call. Instead of like, how about you work referrals? How about you go cold call? How about you go hunt? How about you go to businesses? And that is just missing in the market. And I'm like looking for sales books other than maybe a Zig Ziglar or a Brian Tracy, who I look up to, and those have been like virtual mentors of mine. But like, it just isn't talked about enough today. So that's really what the premise of me trying to get my thoughts and my passion and my desire for the world to be like, the character building element of going and hunting is so needed as development as a human being.
So tell me more about that. Why do you think that's important, and how do you actually? I'll take a step back. Do you think that is nature or nurture? Like, do you feel like you had that when you hit door to door sales, or when you started your sales career, or do you feel like that was developed through good leadership training, etc.?
It's both. And let's like think about this in a very caveman-esque eat what you kill concept. Okay. We are born to survive, right? Like at the end of the day, we all got the problem is we've been domesticated in today's soft society. Everything's so convenient. This chair is comfortable. Back in the caveman day, you didn't have a comfortable chair. Like even trying to put pine needles wasn't like, yes, look at this cozy bed I've got. You know what I mean? Like we have built ourselves domesticated into what is the most comfort. But at the end, like this meal, like I didn't have to kill the freaking cow. Like me versus animal would suck right now. Like it's not like I'm gonna go kill a cow with a bow and arrow right now and like hunt something. But if you think of like the nature of us as humans, we actually get a thrill because we're one of the only things that's anti-fragile. The harder things get and the harder things are, the more we break, the stronger we get. And so we're becoming softer and softer. There's a great book called The Vanishing American Adult. And it's this concept of we're kind of vanishing in the sense of doing hard things. Hence why I love the fitness trip and doing a marathon and things like that, because it's challenging your mind. Where I think in business, so many people start a business and they've never had like in nature, you're like, want to go hunt, eat what you kill. But the nurture of like, you never ever were put in a scenario where you actually had to go get paid for what you got produced and now you want to be an entrepreneur. You never had to go and actually hunt to survive. I just got done with somebody who was trying to sell me some package just barely, and I was like, congrats, like you're hunting, you're pitching me. I love it. I love when a cold call calls me, and I'll entertain them because I'm like, I appreciate another hunter out there. I see what you're doing. But the nurture that we've all been developed as a cold caller, as a door knocker comes to your door, as somebody comes and tries to pitch you, you're like, get away, go away. And it's like inconvenient. I want to shop it on Amazon. I want it to show up on my door. And I'm like, hold on. I guarantee you Bezos started his business by door knocking. I guarantee you Steve Jobs had to go knock a hell of a lot of doors for it to be the convenience of a business that just now self-select, that like runs itself, right? And so many entrepreneurs fail because they never develop a muscle and they never like actually had to go through thick and thin of like face getting kicked in, face getting kicked in, face getting kicked in, and they don't survive because they're not willing to pick up the phone or go knock or go cold call that prospect or whoever they need to talk to. And they're just hoping that an email worked or they're hoping that
Mm,
some funnel
mm-hmm,
worked.
mm-hmm. And it's so much easier to just hide behind the computer and let the funnel work for you, right? Which is when the more effective thing to do is to actually pick up the phone and get told no and do reach outs and all that stuff. I wrote a post the other day talking about direct sales, door to door sales, and how I think it's the best thing I ever did in my life was knock doors in college. And I
You had to
think
learn, you learned a skill.
yes, and you learn to cope with rejection. It's a unique thing. I mean, it's one of my brother's favorite stories. I mean, within 24 hours of my first day on the doors, I got 3 girls' numbers in college. and, and it wasn't because I got better at asking for their number. It's just I got so many no's that I got back to school and I'm like, what's one more? I wanted to
Yeah,
ask for
let's
this
one
girl's
more now.
number for so it's just so funny how it just translates into all areas of your life. And so I wrote
Well,
this post. I said, hey, I think everyone should either be in direct sales or out of high school. You should either go into direct sales or go to get a trade degree. and not everyone, but most people, instead of getting a dumb, worthless 4-year degree, you should do one of those two things. So that's my take. I want to
Yeah, you,
I want to kick it to you. Like, do you agree with that? Do you think it's is it, hey,
I,
this is definitely not for everyone? Like, what's your take on that?
I agree to a point. I think everybody needs to at least give it a go for 4 months or something. But like, I also agree to the point where, now you're in your 30s. Okay, did you get fat now? Does that make sense? Like, I think it's like, I think everybody should play a sport in high school. But it's like, okay, but I don't think everybody should get fat when they're 30 and stop playing a sport. Does that make sense? So like it's now you're like, yeah, I used to play basketball. It's like I want when somebody calls me and says, come play pickup ball, and I'm 34, I don't want to be the fat, crappy, still don't got no game and talk about when I played in high school. I still want to still keep upkeep to where you ask me to play pig or horse or 21 or whatever with you today or pickup, I'll hang. Does that make sense? And I'll hang with the 22-year-old kid because I think people, as they grow older, they think they lose touch with the things that got them where they are. And they may have made $1 million and they may have had a successful business, but then they're like almost too good to go back to the foundational thing that gets you business. And if you think of any core business, it's prospect, get a lead, present, talk to that person, close. And I go through that in this book. I go through, how to go properly approach people, how to craft your pitch, how to go overcome those objections on the initial hurdle, then get into the home or get into a business or present yourself in an opportunity or land a book deal or whatever the thing that you're trying to pitch, right? And it's like, if I can teach you how to go to actual work tracks, what to say, how to do it, how to craft it, psychology do you need, and you could shift some things like that into your vernacular essentially. Then how much more conversion do you have? Because at the end of the day, the whole point of business, the whole point of life really is conversion. And you're trying to find a wife, obviously you struggle to be converting, right? You're trying to, preach the gospel, you're struggling in conversions. Like, you're trying to get friends, you're obviously struggling in converting friends, like whatever the thing is. And so it's
Selling
like,
books,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I think people get soft in their later years because they lose that dog. Like,
Mm.
they lose that prey drive, that fight, and so yes, in the sense at a young age from a development standpoint. So let's use my son, for example. He's 8 and he wanted a go-kart. And so what does a normal parent do is like, no, you can't have a $1,200 go-kart. Like, it's the Segway thing. He's obsessed. He's like, I need this. And I'm like, I'm not spending that for Christmas. Like, that's a hell of a lot of money for this. So I said, I'll tell you what, you can call and sell door-to-door con tickets. They're $400. I'll give you a $100 coupon code and you can go into my CRM and just start dialing. And he's like, well, what do I get? And I was like, I'll give you as long as you sell 10 tickets, I'll give you a go-kart. He's like, bet. He's 8. He gets on the phone and within literally 2 days, about 4 hours each day, he had sold 17 tickets, $6,900 of cash collected,
You're kidding.
cold calling as an 8-year-old. I have the whole thing on Instagram. If you go to my Instagram, Taggart, you will watch this part 1, part 2. And I recorded a lot of them just because I was mind blown. Because then I walk over to my sales team and I said, how many calls have you guys made today? And I looked, he had made 3 times the amount of calls.
You're
He's
kidding.
8 years old and he collected more than the entire 5 sales reps combined in 1 week. He did in less than 24 hours.
That's a tough
And
day to be on your sales team.
I know. I look at my sales team and I go, if my 8-year-old is kicking all your asses combined, because he's out hustling you, he's out. And here's what I learned from this. And I go, wow, there's some lessons from this.
Mm.
Because I started selling golf balls when I was 7. My dad said, you want something? He taught me this principle that I think 99% of parents don't teach their kids because they're lazy. They just will say, great, you can go get the go-kart or no, because they don't want to come up with a problem and a solution. They don't know how to say, I'm a
Mm.
professional problem solver. I said, I'll give you a way to get it because I made $6,900. He made 1,200. Like, that's a win right there, right? And I said, I'll give you a way to go do it. And I think parents struggle at
That's
that
good.
because, and if you're in your 40s right now
Gosh,
listening to
that's good.
this, your parents may have never given you that. They may
Hmm.
have conditioned you to say, go work at Starbucks and go work in college and go get 70, 60 grand a year and work your way up. And you never were conditioned what I just taught my 8-year-old. And my dad luckily taught me at a young age. I said I had to go sell golf balls. I had to paint curbs all through high school. I had to go eat what I kill. And so when you say, is it nature or nurture? I go, the problem is actually starting with our parenting. And then it can be a learned skill, because then everybody goes, well, I'm just not a sales guy. I'm just not that kind of guy. I go, great. So you want to live your whole life having somebody else dictate what you're paid, having somebody else dictate your future, and you getting your job security solely dependent on the position of the company and what their profitability is. And you have no contribution because you aren't willing to. No offense to any W-2 employee out there, because it's like, you're making 70 grand. Great. That's because whatever the company's valued you at, and you're like, yes, I will take that. And I'm not against that. I need those people. Like, they're great. But I'm just saying, how much more empowered would you feel if you knew you could go self-dictate whatever you wanted? And I'm teaching an 8-year-old now. I've broke him because he's like, oh, I want an iPhone now and I'll get that in a day. And I'm like, it's not
Oh
always that
no.
easy, bro. Like, oh shit.
It's the best and the worst thing that ever
I know.
just
I was
happened
like,
to
I'm
that
gonna break
kid.
him. He's hooked, dude. He's hooked. So
He's not going to school. He's on the
I
phone.
know. He showed up to school that day in a suit, and he showed up to work in a suit, dude. And I was like, who is this 8-year-old, bro? He's like, I'm making business today. He was set on that. But the
Oh.
lesson, I want to say one more thing on that.
Mhm.
The lesson that I thought was so interesting was because even me calling somebody to sell him a door-to-door con ticket, I said, we'll have 3,000 people there. I've done this for 8 years. I get on the phone with somebody. I'm afraid to ask for VIP. I'm afraid to give it to him at full price. Me, I'm the owner. Like, I've done this for 8 years. And he was just like, it's January 7th, 8th, or 9th. Do you want general admissions 400, VIPs 1,200? Which one do you want? He had no fear, like, no. And then they go, well, I don't know. Can I call you back tomorrow? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, well, to me, I'm like, they're never going to get it. There's no hope because I've been conditioned this way. He's like, oh, they're going to get it. They're going to call me back tomorrow. Like, the dumb naivety. But he was so his like conviction, his belief, his excitement. And I'm like, how often do we lose that? Because maybe we've been doing this for so long.
Oh.
And the
Oh.
novelty of just him, him being so new. And he's like, oh, they're going to get it. He said he's going to get it. He's going to call me tomorrow and he's going to buy it. I gotta be there. He said he's gonna call me back. And it's like, how often do we lose this faith in sales or in
Mm,
business because we maybe got hit once? Maybe we've been conditioned, like, yeah, they'll never call me. So then I lose hope on
mhm,
every one of them we blanketed.
mm.
You know what I mean? So I thought that was an interesting like lesson I just watched. I mean, this is in the last week or two, so this is it's kind of fun. So anyway.
That is wild. What you talk about the three um, kind of three pillars in the book. There was prospecting. There was something else. So can you
Yeah,
go
so
back through what are those and yeah, just kind of lay the
yes.
framework.
Um, really simple. Like, you have kind of the mindset in the sense of, like, what is a carnivore mentality different, and how do I start reconditioning? Because it's not an overnight. Because I always say, what's an herbivore? Always an herbivore. And I say that laughingly because there are a lot of lead babies that are probably listening to this right now that I'm sorry. Like, it's just hard to come back. And when you've taken and domesticated a dog and put him out in the wild, he's not going to beat the cougar. You know what I mean? Like, the fight is not going to be as
Mm,
strong. But if he grew up in the wild, he's going to have a stronger fight. Does that make
mm.
sense?
That
So
makes
what's
sense.
the mentality exercises you can start to do to start to be like, damn it, I'm in the wild now. I got to go eat. I don't want to get eaten. So let's go. And then the second piece would be the prospecting. So, like, what to say, how to craft a pitch, how to, like, what's that initial like pitch, let's say. Then you have present, which would be, how do you build out and model out real value conditioning, real objection staking, real like tactical tools that you can do when you're mapping out a presentation. You got them in the hook, you got them on 45-minute demo or whatever you're trying to sell. How do I really map this out? And then closing, which would then kind of have a subset of objection handling, right? So objections are going to come out throughout. So there's a whole section on objection handling. And I wrote another book on closing. So we didn't go through like ABCs of closing, but like we technically went through like, how do you tie people down? How do you get them to believe it was their idea? We call that the inception shovel. How do you help people want to buy instead of want to be sold? And I think in
Mm,
today's world, like, selling is different than if I were to pick up a Zig Ziglar book. the archetype of selling, the way we have technology, the way that we have, social media, the way we have outreach, and the inundation of emails and information people have access to, the research ability versus maybe you sold pre-internet, that that is just a different way in the modern day of selling. And so I talk through kind of like what in today's world can you do to become more of a carnivore in your own business, your own home, like just in life? Like how do you move through to transact more and convert more in life?
That's good. I like that. And gosh, there's so many follow-up questions I could ask you. What is your tip for the person who they've the domesticated cat or dog or whatever you said, the person who's in business and they've had success now and they've gotten lazy and they've lost this eat what you kill mentality.
Well,
How do you re-spark that and rebuild that?
so let's take like a typical, let's just use a use case of like real estate. I'm a successful real estate agent. I've been doing this for 10 years now. Most of my business is probably referral, repeat, established, right? You bring on a new real estate agent into your firm, they're going to say monkey see, monkey do. Does that make sense? So they're going to say, I'm going to do what my boss, my owner, my culture calls for. Does this make
Yeah.
sense?
Yep.
But what they didn't see is what you did 10 years ago to build your
Yes.
book to where you are. And so
Mm-hmm.
you survived 10 years where the average realtor might only survive 3 months. How many
Mm-hmm.
people get their real estate license and never even sell a deal? So it's like, let's just use this use case because I don't care what you're selling or what culture or what business you're in, is your team needs to see you go do what they do. And so best practice would be either once a week, once a day, once a month, once a year, have some kind of a blitz where they see you back in trench. And what you could do is just even schedule an hour a day. I'm going to get on the phones with you guys for an hour a day. They watch you, and all of a sudden you'd be shocked. You're like, dang, I just grew my business because I took an hour, and what I can do in an hour is probably what they could do in a day. And so you just took an hour and just boom, boom, boom. And like I beat all my sales guys last month. I'm still outselling them. I have 10 sales guys now, and I had the best month because I'm like, look, beat you. So door to door con, it said me, I'm going to sell 1,000, and you guys collectively sell 1,000. I'm going to stay in the trenches with them. So it's like me versus the team.
Mm.
So doing things as an owner to play games with your teams and getting back to those roots of like, okay, Kim, my assistant, I was like, schedule a time for an hour. I can just actually make my calls. Cause I'm like, if I'm back on the phones, my business does better. Does that make
Mm.
sense? Where instead of
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm waiting for a referral or I'm just working my network. Well, guess what? Like if you spend an hour a day just calling out people, but you justify all the other things that fill your calendar and do all the things but talk to prospect, and then you're bitching about how you have a money problem. But it's not that you don't get referrals. It's not that you don't have a good name. It's just you're not doing the things like you used to 8 hours a day just on the phones. You just do an hour a day. Does that make sense? And then all of a sudden you can move it to two, or then you start to like remember and you get in touch with your sales culture and team, and you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing with. So all that's going to be very powerful.
That's great. I like that a lot. What would be, I'm gonna, take the last 10 minutes or so of this, and I want to do a live case study.
Love it.
Okay. Hopefully this is valuable for people. If not, if I think it will be. It's good.
No, I'm here to help you too. Like
I was going to
if
say,
you want to get,
it'll be very
yeah,
valuable for me, and I think there's a lot of other people that this might be beneficial to. So I'll frame it up. 8-figure company, about 60 employees. We've been remote for a decade. I think I maybe even texted you about this. We're building out our in-person sales team here in Austin. For the first time, we've never had an office. We've never had an in-person sales team, any of that stuff. So we're having to learn a bunch of stuff. And we're creating an SDR office. So for those who don't know, sales development reps, outbound calls to inbound leads kind of thing. So let's take this as a case study. We're resetting the culture and we're building it from the ground up
yep.
here in Austin. So walk me through how you would approach that. How would you recruit? How would you recruit at a high level? How would you think about developing, retaining? Like, I'll ask some follow-ups, but like that's just kind of a tee up.
So in 10 minutes, that's a lot, but I have a bunch of resources I'll send you after this. Like we have a recruiting playbook, a business playbook, like, scripts, like all that kind of cool stuff.
Well, I'm
So
about to buy a bunch of copies of this book
yeah, I was
and
like,
give them to every new person we hire.
yes, no, that would be a good practice. Like, but it's not the first week or two, right? The first
Sure.
week or two is I'd have, so let's think recruitment. You can use Indeed, you could use Facebook ads, you could use whatever, right? But the architect you're looking for and the interview question you want to ask is, if I gave you 0 leads, what do you do? You have 8 hours of work today, you have no leads, what do you do? Does that make sense? Because like these are outbound. Like you want to say, does this person think like a carnivore? Meaning they
Mm,
say, I'll go on social media, start DMing people. I'll go start calling, like, like, do they have a way of even
mm,
thinking to think like a carnivore? So they're like, and then
mhm.
if I took away all your leads and I said, you got to make $100 a day or you lose your job. Or I just said, you got to make 100 phone calls a day. Would you do it? Yes or no? And there might be some people who are like, I'm over that. I'm not doing that. Perfect. I need somebody that's at least going to make $100 a day. So it's like
Yep.
finding the right archetype of a person. So they sit down, and now it's like I have a meeting every single day, and probably if I'm starting out, twice a day. A daily huddle at 9 to 9:30, and an end of day huddle from like we'll
Mm,
call it 5 to 5:30 or something.
mhm.
Let's call that your schedule. And then I have accountability every day in my Slack, right? Like when you get a set, you set it and you put in there 1, 2, 3, and I've got a leaderboard posted and it is
Yep.
very clear who is performing and who isn't. I think a lot of sales cultures don't have this like, I'm badass, you suck culture. And if you want a sales culture that's like, ooh, we're all equal, I'm like, sorry, you're not going to have a really good. So you just need to have a clear indication of this guy's kicking ass and you need to call out. So I'm firing my friend Sensei is a lot. 2 people today, right? They started 2 weeks ago, and I start a fast start, right? So you have a fast start, and you give them a 2 week time frame that you just say you have a competition, and here are the bonuses: is you hit 1 tier, 2 tier, 3 tier, 4 tier, and 5 tier. And if they don't even make a tier, it's a clear indication of they're not going to work out. So I
Mm,
hire every 2 weeks. I'm hiring, and I know that if I hire 5, I'm probably going to keep 1 or 2 because they're not going to pass my fast start sniff test. And I just statistically know, because I've trained thousands of sales reps now over 20 years, I know that I know how this plays out. So instead of like trying to like force and only hire 3 people and hope all 3 people work, I'm like, no, I'm going to hire these candidates. I'm going to say, go to work. I'm going to make a clear game. I'm going to say, you play the game. And if you don't even want to play this game, then that's like, what are we doing? Like, this is your first 2 weeks. Like, you should be showing off. You should be wanting to like impress. You should be asking all the questions. Things are only going to get worse because you're going to be comfortable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know within those first 2 weeks, really an indicator of like, how serious are they about this job?
mhm.
And I make sure that I cut the fat, because if you get permission to suck within your company, then their culture is going to suck. And so I don't
Mm,
like to tolerate just people that want to just sit here as a free loaf of bread. So I actually pay my people. So pay and compensation is probably another topic you want to architect. You want to
mhm,
incentivize the behavior you want. So I give a very small base to get them in, but then most of their money should be made by SAT appointments or closed deals, right? So I
mhm.
don't want to have this like, if somebody comes in and is like, I need 70 grand guaranteed, it's like, you already are scaring me. I will help you make way more than 70 grand. Don't be a bitch. Like, you're just not going to fit my culture. And so if they're like, well, I can't, I'm like, honestly, that's because you're probably an herbivore. So peace, you can go to the herbivore cultures. And if you're trying to get somebody to make $100 a day, like, you just don't want that guy. You want the guy
Mm,
that's willing to bet on themselves. Be like, if
mhm,
I bet on myself and you're willing to bet on yourself, we're gonna be super aligned.
mhm.
So I'd have my daily meetings and I'd run those 2 weeks in the first fast start. And then I'd have, your kind of monthly or quarterly competitions going. And that is as much as I probably could spew fastly
Cool.
in my
I love
10 minutes.
that. So a couple follow-ups on that would be, when you talked about the compensation, are you just doing an onboarding base and then it's commission only, or do they keep a base? Like, what does that
So
look
I do,
like? How
I,
do you,
I let him keep a base and I pay, 2,500 to 3,500 bucks a month. So nothing crazy. Because I am willing to fire. Where bases become bad is if you say you've gone 3 consecutive weeks, I give them about a 90 day, because really good within the first 2 weeks, so you should just fire right away. But then
mm,
after about 90 days, how these people are going to play out, and they've actually kind of overcome a learning curve, because there's usually about a 2 to 3 month learning curve with any new sales job. Because everybody's like, I'm in sales. I'm like, does that mean you sold at Buckle Retail at the mall, or does that mean you actually were like a top door-to-door guy that was like slaying?
mhm,
You know what I mean? So like, everybody says they're in sales, but most of the time they get a sales job and then sales training starts, versus they're a professional salesperson. Like, we have sales certifications that we offer, and that kind of helps people, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're good, right? Like,
right.
so And in 90 days, you know if they're going to be good or not. And then
Mhm.
if they're not hitting their metrics after about 60 to 90 days consecutively, then I'm like, you just got to go because I can't keep paying your base. And you're
Mhm.
actually bringing my culture down by
Right.
keeping you.
Right. That makes sense. And then a follow-up I would ask on the recruiting front. I mean, this has probably been the most challenging thing for us. It, we're just so used to recruiting remote, right? And now it's okay, local to Austin, in person, in the office, 5 days a week, all that stuff. And so it just feels like it's really narrowed our recruiting base,
Yeah.
but also like you just have to recruit differently. It's just a different
Yeah,
muscle,
it's
right? So
different. And so
where would you go? Where would you look? How would you approach that if you were me?
we do both. And our SDR team, we're like, we started, so I've had only in office, then I went only virtual, and now we're hybrid. And so I only hire AEs now, actually, that are in local because I have so much going on that I want
Mm,
them to be so integrated. And like yesterday from 5 to 6, I was done with my workday and I go and see all the AEs kind of chilling. And I sat for an hour like pouring into them. Where if you weren't here, there's no way we would have done that. And I
totally.
realized like we have so much variation of product and things like that. So I actually really love having that. Where having a local culture, what's so cool is you start to build the momentum of like, I took them go-karting 2 weeks ago. You know, we have Top Golf membership. We have, you know, it's like, how do you build in this culture? And so I realized that my struggle was I had to be the sales manager for a while. And if I'm not willing to be the sales manager, it's going to kill the culture. And so unless you have somebody that's every day pounding, walking the floor, paying attention to them, that sales leader is your kingpin. And if you don't have one, you have to be willing to play that hat and drop and offload certain things because it's like it is literally like the driving force of your revenue. And so many people don't realize like they make the best sales manager and their guys look up to them as their leader, but they're so busy doing all these other things that are also important. Can I offload some of that or prioritize time? So it's like I was in every meeting for like 4 or 5 months until I got a sales leader. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
play that culture
Hmm.
driver until you've replaced that.
Hmm. Love that. And so where do you recruit though? Is it
So
Indeed? Are you going LinkedIn? Are you going local organizations? Are you coming straight out of college? Are you going door to door set?
if you're
Like,
going SDR team right now, I'd go like to a campus right now and I would just say, hey, we're offering, you know, we're here local. We have a really cool long-term career path. You know, a lot of people get their start in sales. And I would just go campus recruit, to be honest.
hmm.
And because what you want with an SDR is kind of that young, hungry entrepreneur type, like I need to learn sales, you know, and
Hmm.
you're not don't expect to keep an SDR forever, right? Like, and so you've got to have this like if they're good, they could move to AE maybe, but like know how to go find like these young hungry dudes that are willing to be competitive and willing to go hunt. And you know, college might be a good place, but Indeed, like we get good ones off Indeed. Like my new guy, like out of the 4 hires, one of them is like badass. Like and we got him on Indeed, you know. So have Indeed going,
Mm,
maybe go do a booth at a college and kind of
hmm.
compare what kind of characters are we getting. But just having an Indeed strategy, you know, you have 1,000 applications come in, 500 of them you slough off, and then 250 of them actually answer, and then you know you just it's a lot of work to like actually go through the pipeline of applications for Indeed. And so as long as you have either a VA or somebody or an outsourced company, like we do this for a lot of companies, where we kind of do all the heavy lift of that so that you get the second interview or third interview,
Cool.
then it helps like speed, you know, that filtering process because it is a heavy filter process.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it brings me back to my student painters days, honestly, when we
100%.
used to do class talks and you're going into the business school and ahead of class, you're talking to the
Yeah.
professor, hey, can I speak for just 2 minutes about an internship with the school? And then you're telling, it's just like that kind of grassroots college based recruiting. That's interesting.
But the other thing, like, here's another place you could recruit. Post on your social. And like you'd be surprised because you have such a mentorship opportunity. Like people listen to you, they care about you. Like people get starry-eyed when I come in and do training. Like they're like, dude, that was so helpful. Like for me to spend an hour with them, like I make sure they know I charge like 4 or 5 grand an hour to do a coaching thing. I just
Mm,
spent that hour with you and I could have gone home. You know what I mean?
right.
Like I want them to see this as like you get time with Sam, like that's a perk of being part of the job. You get time with Eric, that's a perk of being part of the job. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm. Cool.
So
I
you
love
might
it.
get some of fanboys listening to this podcast or on your social that are like, dude, I'm like passionate about what you're doing. Can I come move to Austin and or I already live there?
Yep. Well, hey, if you're listening to this, watching this right now, you're in Austin, Texas, or you know someone who
Yeah, dude,
is.
hit him up. Hit him up.
You want to come make six figures and change the trajectory of your family tree, you know who to call.
Big.
Sam, gosh, this is so fun, so good. Guys, the book, again, it's called Eat What You Kill. Buy it, pre-order it. If you're watching this, listening to this, the book's already come out. Maybe you need to buy this book for your sales team. That's what I'm going to be doing. And so I'm excited for that. And so I think we got some stuff cooking with your conference coming up. Sam, where's the best place to send people at the end of this? Where can people go to buy the book, check out more about you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so thesamtaggart.com. You'll see the book on there. You'll see anything on me. And the Sam Taggart on Instagram. And more than happy if you have a sales team that's like struggling, you got a bunch of herbivores, you want to turn them to carnivores, like that's what we do best. Like, when we built, like all I did from 11 until my whole career, I've never had a W-2. I've made millions and millions of dollars knocking on doors, been one of the highest levels at it. And I think there's too many people out there that are like, well, we don't do door to door. And I'm like, yeah, but if you take dudes that made millions of dollars in their 20s knocking on doors and put them into your car lot or put them into your restaurant or like whatever. Like I had a car wash company we just contracted. They have 37 locations. It's like, I want to teach my car wash people to be dogs. And it's like, we get those all the time where it's like, there's too many people that aren't teaching this. And so if you need a jolt to the arm, we're more than happy to help you out.
I love it. Guys, check Sam out, his company, conference, the book. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe. Check out the next one. Appreciate you, Sam. This was great.
Thanks, my man.